Hello, this is Arcades, and welcome to a bit of another how-to video here on Stormworks Build and Rescue. And this time I thought I'd check out or talk about something interesting. It's going to relate to something we just did recently, and also with what it took to me work with this. So, yeah. So, but what we're going to be looking at are these. We're going to be looking at tooltips on microcontrollers. So, hope you have a good time. Hope you enjoy what you watch. If you do, remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Helps the channel out immensely. And, yeah. Let's take a look at this. Okay. First of all. Alright. First thing here is we're going to talk about tooltips. What tooltips are is when you make a microcontroller, you have the option of making so it displays information so that when you mouse over it, it displays all this. Now, my favorite use for it is debugging, but it has other uses as well. As you can see, I have my oil rig up and it's ready to run. All I gotta do to start, hit this button and let it go. Now, what's gonna happen is you'll see here is that all this data here is going to start changing based on what's happening outside. So you could kind of, sit there and see what is going on with this. Because right now it's moving the drill swivel position around to transfer the rod and such. And right now we're digging, as you can see. So right now it's waiting for this to dig. And as you can see, the position's getting lower and lower according to that swivel position, which is that line at the top. Everything else is waiting on that. And when that gets done, you'll hear the pop, and you'll see a whole bunch of things change as it goes to do the next step in the stage of this drilling process, as it's about to hit down there. And this microcontroller is receiving data from all these points. Now, as I was developing the microcontroller to automate this thing, I needed to debug problems. And which the best way to find that out was to see it actually make changes while it was operating. So the best way to find that info out was to make these tooltips so that when I moused over the microcontroller, it would tell me what's going on. Oh, there it goes. Now, as you can see, the rod transfer position, that's changing. That's that up there. And now you see the different ons and offs are changing as things are moving around. Things are in position, so they're triggering, and there it goes. And as you can see, that's one way you can tell what's going on with the machinery just based on what you're seeing here. So now, we're going to head over to a workbench, and I want to show you how you can actually apply it to a microcontroller. Okay, so you may or may not recognize this, depending on which videos you've watched, but in a previous video, I showed how to make this speed converter. Well, you can actually use tooltips not only for debugging, but for informational collection. So, like right here. So you can see, I got the speed converter. And you'll notice it's telling me information. I've set it up to tell me these different things about what's going on. So it's telling me what mode it's set in. It's telling me what channel it's putting out, because this is a composite version. And it's also telling me the other values so that I can actually compare. And see right here, that's the actual output. And when we go, you'll see it's giving me all the information right there. So this is kind of like an observational use you can use of tooltips, so you can see what's going on actively as something's doing it, just like you would other case. Now, my other instance I showed you with the oil rig, that was a lot of debugging, but it still allows me to observe what's going on in the system. Now, this one I directly built with the idea that it was going to show me data in the first place, so I created, the displays to do and such. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over how can we create this setup. So if you take a look and find my video on the speed converter, this will build it up. and you can just attach onto there. But the main purposes of the video is to show you how you can apply these tooltips and put them in different uses. So yeah. So without further ado, let's hit the workbench. First of all, now this is the composite speed converter that I made in my previous video. I'm just going to copy it like I did there, and we're going to slap it down right here. So you can see it's set up. We got default to knots. We're going to go ahead and leave it there. And you can see it's on channel 1. So real quick, I'm going to go ahead and set up we're going to put the linear speed sensor to its input. Then we're going to go to the composite. And technically we don't need to change it because this is the same thing and it's get the same data. So, but yeah, you would hook this up into here. So that would be hooked up into your appropriate device and display. All right, we've got that done. Now we're going to go into the microcontroller itself. We're going to go over to our logic. And now this is what we have right now. Now, let's show what tooltips are in the first place. Now, there are two tooltips. You have, they're down here in your property, down on the bottom, tooltip on-off. Displays an on-off signal with this microcontroller's tooltip when looked at by the player on a spawned vehicle. And then you have the number one. Displays a number on this microcontroller tooltip when it's looked at by the controller on a spawned vehicle. So as you can see, they're pretty much the same. Now, you see this one, the logic says display number and has an error thing. This is just an on-off switch from what I can tell. So if there's an error that you produce that you want to say, hey, this thing isn't working correctly, this is what will display. And as you can see with this one, it just has a display signal, whether it's on or off. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and first thing is, let's just go and put one of each down so you can see how it works. I'm going to grab a threshold gate for now, and we're going to put this here. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab, we have our property drop down from there, and we're just going to put this to here, and I'm going to change the values from 1 to 1. So it's looking for the specific value of 1, which in case you remember from this, that's this. So it's going to register as meters per second. And we're just going to take this and put it down to here. Then we're going to grab the actual input and we're going to put it into, so this is coming from the, for this example, that's coming from the linear speed sensor. And we're going to put it right here on the tooltip. And then we have this to here. And then when you go in here, they have, you will see different labels. Now, for the numerical one, you'll have a value. And that's what you'll name. So we will just put this, we will just change its name to speed. Just like that. That's what we'll say. And in this case, we will put meters a second. We'll just leave it there. And then we're going to leave the display always on, but you can choose if error, if no error. So if it says no error, it will not display. Or if the error node is given a, an on signal, it won't display. If it's given, now if it does get an on signal, then it'll only display the number then. So in other words, it says if error, it will display. If it says if no error, which means this is off. I'm sorry, I think I have backwards. Okay, I figured that explanation was a little complicated, so I figured I'll just give more practical, simplified version. I've got a keypad here. It's hooked up into there. As you can see, I got the tooltip for value. Now, it's set for all showing always right now. So as you can see, it's showing the value. When I hit this button, this actually sends the error signal. So when I hit this, you will get the error signal. It turns the value red, which is what I forgot to explain in that little bit of dialogue. So as you can see here, it is now in error state, which means it's red. I turn that off. It's no longer an error. Back in here, and we change this to, it will show the value display if error. So now we brought it out, we can look at it, you see it shows no value, but if I put in a value, say 52 again, and I hit the error button, it shows it. I turn off the error button, it does not show. But it shows it as red, showing it's a state of error. Now we're back in here, and if we change this to if no error, and we look at this, as you can see, it's showing the error of 52, which I have there. Or it's showing the value of 52. But I go to hit the error button, and it disappears. So if it's an error value, and if you have it set to if no error, it will not show the error. If you have it showing a value, and you have it to say if only error, it will only display as an error, which in this case, displaying as an error means it displays the value as red. If it is not an error value, it will display it as green. Whew. So an example of what you could use an always present and having the error value there for is if you have the microcontroller managing or monitoring your temperature, and you're using the tooltips right here or to be able to see it, you could have it change to where it goes from green to red when it hits that, have a threshold gate hit the error on at 100 degrees, and it'll change it to red, an error value, to say, hey, this is bad. And then when it comes under 100 degrees, then it goes back to green. So, and that's if you're wanting to see it. But that's what you can do with the tooltips. Now for the on-off, you can change the name of the tooltip. So in this case, I'm just going to put it as mode. I'm going to call it speed mode. Like I do here. And then on the on label, we're just going to put meters a second, like that. And the off label, we'll just leave as off for now. So it will always show. Or it will always show, I should say. So we're going to update this. And now that we come back out to the truck here and look at it, as you can see, it says speed mode off, and shows the meters per second. So if we start moving, start showing the speed and such. So, and there we go. But right now we just got that. Well, now, what if we actually want to have a little bit of fun with this, and we want to show which... So when you go to look at it and you're wondering, why does this feel weird? We can look at the speed converter and say, wait, what mode are we in? What channel are we displaying on? In case there was problems and we want to reference some of the info of the settings inside here. Well, what we can do is, now you saw, I went ahead and just used 1-to-1 there, right? Well, that aligns up with the meters a second here with the value. And then you see we have all these values here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a threshold, and we're going to create one for each of these, and we're going to set the threshold to equal on the high and low to each of these. So give me 1 second for that. Okay, so I've got the threshold set up. Now each of these, when you select something here, it will automatically output, these values depending on what you made. So by selecting the value, it outputs this. So what we're going to do is use the thresholds to take that value and be a monitor for which mode we're in. So if this is outputting the value for meters a second, 1, it will output saying, hey, meters a second, and so on and so forth here. So what we're going to do is grab 3 more tooltips. just like this. And we're going to hook these up, and then we're going to name each of these tooltips after each of the drop-down boxes. Okay, as you can see here, I've got them all named speed mode. And then I turn their on labels to each of the respective measurements, speed measurements. So be here 1.94 for the knots, 2.237 for the miles per hour, 3.6 for the kph, and 1 for the meters a second. Okay, so we're now back in the truck, and you see we're all hooked up there. And now if you look, it says speed mode, and it's showing off for the other ones, but we don't want it to look like that. We actually want to clean it up so only the one that's actually active is actually showing. Now, how would we do that? And what we'll do is we come into here and we're going to set this to display if on. And we will do that for each of these. And this is where the threshold gates come into play, because now when they are active and on, they will turn on the appropriate tooltip, and since they will only display if on, only this one will actually appear. So as you can see, it's now saying, hey, we're in the speed mode of knots. Okay, now since we're also composite, we would kind of like to know which channel we're outputting on. So what we can do here is actually a little bit simpler. All we need to do is take the numerical tooltip. So we're going to grab a new one of that. We'll just place it there. And we're going to take the property number from our speed channel and just put it straight into there. And we're going to name it and we'll just name it, actually, I was going to say channel output. We're going to name it output channel. Just like that. And then we're just going to leave that on always. Now if you look, it's showing the channel that it's outputting on, which this is outputting on that channel, and so on and so forth. Yep. Okay, now, but what if we need to compare data? Like, we have that, but I want to compare what's going on in there with the other values as well. Like, say, what if I actually want to compare what we're going in other speed values? But I only need the dial to actually show that speed. Say you're trying to compare the speeds of, rate the speeding. But what you're displaying is trying to be for specific values. In other words. So what we're going to do... Okay, so we're back in here. Now this is where it gets a little complicated. Well, it's not super complicated, but it does get a bit more interesting. So we're going to grab these single function blocks, and we're going to grab 3 of them. Yes, 1, 2, 3. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to conversions, and we're just going to type them in again. So it will be x times 3.6, x times 2.237, and x times 1.944. Those are all these conversions right here. I rounded up these, obviously, and that's, up here as well. Now, we're going to take the actual input here from the speed sensor, and we're bringing that down to these 3 right here. Now, we have 3 of these, but we actually need... We're going to go ahead and put these right here. And then I'm going to grab 4 of these tooltips, of the numerical tooltips. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then for these, we are just going to name them the particular value. So meters a second, kph, mph, miles per hour, and then finally knots. All right. And we're going to grab the input. We're going to put that straight into the meters a second because that's 1 for 1, so we don't need to actually multiply it. The 3.6 will go into the kph, 2.37 will go into the miles per hour, and 1.944 will go into our knots. Okay, now here's the fun part. Now the thing is we only really want it, in the case of what I'm going to do here, I only want it to show the ones that aren't active. So in other words, this one is determining our mode, so we're going to take advantage of this. So we are going to grab, and we're going to take these and put these on the inputs of the error of each of these blocks. So the 1 times will go to the meters a second, the 3.6 to the kph, the 2.24 threshold will go to the miles per hour, and the 1.944 to the knots. Okay, so we're using the error input as a switch from the thresholds that we're using to determine which mode is on. So now we're going to come into these, and it says display always. Well, we actually only want to show it if it's not in that mode. So we're going to display if no error for each of these. Switch them to if no error. So that means if there's no error, the error is triggered by the threshold gates, which are triggered by the property drop down menu. So that's creating our what is active and what's not. Okay, so we're back here. Take a look at that, and as you can see, it is now showing which speed mode we're in, what channel it's outputting, and it's showing the 3 other variables, the 3 other speed conversions, so you can actually compare. Just like that. And there's the speed, and you can compare there. Now, like I said, this is for something like observational data, so in case you need to compare and make sure everything's right, or you can just, like I said, get, comparative data. Now, you technically could, if you wanted to, just say, or just have it show always, and then not even worry about the mode. So it'll just show all of them, so you can just look at it constantly, but I like the idea that it's separate. It's only showing me the ones it's not in actually mode for by looking at it. Yeah. So yeah, tooltips. Very interesting, very helpful. They can tell you whether stuff's active or not, whether it's on or off, whether it's broke or not. Because that first one, like I said, that is actually showing that it's what mode, and that's using the threshold gates as an on-off. We're using another one to display the channel that the thing is outputting on, and then the other one is showing the values, doing a little bit of mathematical, and then showing you the values of the other speed conversions. So that way, you don't need like 9 different things. You can actually collapse all these down, so you don't have to have 1, 2, 3, 4 different things showing all the speeds when you can just look at this. So it kind of makes it into a custom dial in a way, but you just need to put it where you can see it and such. So, yeah. So, yeah, I hope this was helpful. I know not everybody immediately thinks about tooltips, but they can be useful tools for helping something, for figuring out problems. Breaking, if something's breaking on you, you can always use the tooltips to help find out what's active in the world as you're actually trying to use it, so you can find out if there's problems and such. So, yeah. Hope you had a good time. Hope you enjoyed the watch. If you did, you know the deal, you know the spiel. This is Arcades, signing out. Have yourself a good day. Whee!